and welcome to today's webinar, Effective Use of Your Voice When Public Speaking. And I think one of the things we need to be aware of is that our voice matters, and part of our ability to engage, to influence, to persuade, to have a positive effect through speaking is the way we use our voice. So Peter, use my name, public speaking trainer and coach, and welcome to today's webinar. So, housekeeping, how to get started. Let me share my screen again. Ask questions as we go, take notes, participate, think and apply to your own personal situation. Are you going to do anything different with your voice? Do you need to become more aware of how people perceive your voice as being credible or approachable? Do you speak too fast? Is your voice too soft? And then what can you do to change, improve your voice as we go? One of the things I like to talk about is doing an audit. I call it a self-audit, but sometimes you don't know about your voice. You need to get feedback from people, but becoming aware, taking the time to find out how people, your audience, perceive your voice is worthwhile. And it's in your court. The ball is in your court. So do you know if people perceive you as a fast speaker or a slow speaker? Do you speak too fast? Some people speak really, really, really fast, and this can be very, very distracting. Other people may be too deliberate, too mechanical, and speak too slow. Do you use filler words, also known as extraneous words? These are the ums and the ahs, the you knows, the like, the so's, and of course those more complicated extraneous filler words. And when you actually think about some of the things that people actually say or the words they actually use, actually if they didn't use the word actually, that actually sound more credible actually and more confident actually without using actually. Can you be heard clearly at the back of the room? Having a quiet voice is not an issue, it's not a problem. It just means you would ask for a microphone, or you may need to practice with your diaphragmatic breathing down low to project your voice to the back of the room. It's a skill that we can learn. But do you know? Or do you have a really loud voice that is too loud and you need to tone it down? If you're unaware of that, you're going to be seen as maybe aggressive or overpowering. This self-awareness, this finding out is really important. And many people I work with don't know that they use ums and ahs or other filler words to the extent that they do. So that feedback is a discovery from them. So now that they're self-aware, they can work on reducing filler words or increasing your volume, or if you need to, toning the volume down. Is your voice seen as one that's interesting to listen to? A nice sounding voice. We hear the radio quality voice of our newsreaders, and they do have interesting voices. And along with that is the natural intonation and the variation of your voice, the up and down, the music we have in our voice. Do you have a naturally interesting voice? For myself, I have had feedback, and my perception is that my voice is not all that interesting. and my intonation is not brilliant. I tend to have a flat, monotone, nasal quality male voice. So I'm not the radio host with that beautiful, beautiful plum in their mouth and that lovely rise and fall of the voice. Tends to be monotone. So just hang on to that thought as we move forward. So why is voice important? The power of your voice. I run a non-verbal communication workshop as well. And over half of what we communicate is in our non-verbal communication. And you know that first impressions count, and we've got about 7 seconds. So the smile, the way we stand, the way we breathe, the use of our gestures, all of this adds around half of our ability to influence and get our message across. The next biggest chunk is in our voice. So this is the 30%, the 33, the third, and the remaining roughly 10% is in the words that we say. So if you script a beautiful presentation and you deliver it with a very boring monotone voice that goes at a steady pace, almost as if you're talking in time with a metronome, you may not have the impact that you want. So a third of our ability to influence, get our message across to the people in your audience, in your workshop, is in your voice. Voice matters. And I'm going to suggest that in the current world, our voice matters even more in the webinar, in the Zoom, in the hybrid meeting, in the Teams, the WebEx. We're doing more and more online learning, online meetings, hybrid meetings. And so your voice is one of the main ways of getting things across. My body language is limited. So voice, I think, is elevated even more in the new world of virtual presentations. So let's give you some tips. The pace and speed at which you talk at, you can speak a little bit faster, especially when it's getting exciting and you really want people to take on board. And then sometimes you just need to slow down. Just need to slow down a bit, just back off. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about the use of the pause. And using pause to slow down can be really valuable. You can also change the volume. So you can increase the volume, you can decrease the volume. You can increase the emphasis on words and speak loud, and you can even go softer. You can whisper. Here's the thing that psychology has discovered. Remember, we spoke about volume. If you are a really loud speaker, know how you perceive. Big booming voice, soft, quiet voice. If your natural voice is perceived by the audience as loud, and you drop your voice, you drop your volume at key points, you're going to increase people's attention to what you say next. If you're a naturally soft speaker, that's your baseline, and you increase your volume above what you naturally speak at, if you're perceived as a soft speaker, then you will increase people's attention, because Peter's gone a little bit louder for a reason. Or Peter's starting to soften his voice for a reason. And the key is to go opposite to your normal voice. Opposite to your normal voice. So this is where you need that self-awareness. Are you seen as a big booming voice? who speaks loud all the time, or are you seen as a soft, quiet speaker? You need to know, because if you're already loud and you go louder, then that'll be perceived as shouting. I mentioned the whisper going soft. A person I follow, Michael Grinder, non-verbal communication expert, teaches a really good skill around going soft. And he calls it the above pause whisper. The above pause whisper. And it goes a little bit like this. If you want to bring a group back, so can you turn to the person next to you, just have a chat for 2 or 3 minutes. And now I want to bring you back. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go loud. Now, if you're all ready, if you're all finished with that, can I move on to the next topic, please? And you'll notice the pause. So you go loud, above the normal volume of the room, then you pause. So in that pause, it's silence. And then you move on with a whisper. And people can't hear what you're saying. So the only way to pay attention is to keep quiet, because I'm going to move on with some more important stuff. And I'm just whispering until you come back. It's called the above pause whisper. And this is the power of using the volume of your voice, sometimes going loud, sometimes going soft. Knowing your baseline, is your baseline considered loud, or is your baseline considered a little bit soft, then you can alternate it one way or the other to create impact. And the best way is to go opposite to what you're normally perceived as. If you're loud, go soft. If you're a soft speaker, go loud. And the power of the pause, also known as silence. This is when you say something and you just remain silent. I just spoke about the above pause whisper. The pause is exactly this pause we're talking about. And I love this quote from Sir Ralph Wilson. The most precious things in a speech are pauses. A pause will fill the void. It will capture attention. It will punctuate, illuminate, and build tension in a speech. Sir Ralph Wilson. So learning to be comfortable with silence is one of my big lessons whenever I run a workshop in public speaking. And when can you use pause? In lots of different scenarios. If you speak too fast. So this is the rapid speaker who speaks all the time very fast, and you're trying to listen to what I'm saying. You've got no time to process what I've just said. So cognitively, you're saying, whoa, what's Peter talking about? And I move on. If you speak too fast, you're probably not going to be able to slow down the rate of your speaking. However, you can use more pauses. The frequency of pauses is increased. Sometimes the duration of the pause is increased. So this gives your listener the impression that you're slowing down, because you've been speaking at that rapid rate for 10, 20, 30 years of your life. Really hard to slow down. But you can use the pause more frequently. It's a bit like the full stops and the commas in the written word. The punctuation, that's the pause. When your mind goes blank, you've got nothing, just stay with it. And 99% of the time, if you pause, you will recover. And if I don't recover, I move on to my next point in my presentation. One thing with the pause, and when your mind goes blank, you feel like there's this monumental gap of silence, this abyss, and you feel you need to say something. This is what it feels like to me when I pause for a long time. The good news is the audience only sees this. So when your mind does go blank and you're experiencing a silence, a gap of silence like this, the audience is only seeing half of it. Once again, learn to be comfortable, embrace pause. If you get a little bit nervous, pausing allows you to breathe. And those ums and ahs and you knows and like, and actually, what was I going to say next? It gives you a little bit of time to gather your thoughts. The funny thing is the pause does the same thing. It gives you those 2 or 3 seconds to gather your thoughts. And you don't have to verbalize the or the ah. So the pause is the antidote to your filler words and to create tension in the speech. So I'm only going to say this once. Of course, now you know. Now you want to know, what was I going to say? Well, let me remind you once again. Are you hearing the tension that I'm creating just by pausing? Please learn to be comfortable with silence or the pause. It's one of the most powerful things in public speaking. And for those of you who do speak too fast, the concept of raindrops. Think of the words that you're saying as valuable messages of gold. In fact, they're coming from your experience, your expertise, your knowledge, your research, and you're sharing them with your audience. I'm going to call them brain drops. Now, we know when it rains too quickly, too heavily, too fast, the water doesn't have a chance to be absorbed by the earth. When you speak too fast, people are not taking, you're not giving people the opportunity to take in those wonderful nuggets of information. The pause enables people to absorb and cognitively process what you've just said. Does that make sense? I'm leaving you with the silence. So the power of the pause. The broken sentence is another tool you can use, your voice, to bring a group back, to draw attention. And it's kind of saying the same thing 2, 3, maybe 4 times, but not complete sentences. And people start to listen. What did Peter say? So it goes a little bit like this. Now, if you're almost ready to move on, I'd like to move to the next topic. And I use that to bring a group of people back. The important thing, if you're going to use a broken sentence as a way of grabbing attention and bringing people back to you, is that each of the broken sentences must not make sense in their own right. So people are going to listen and say, whoa, hang on, that didn't make sense. And they're going to stop talking. They're going to stop the activity they're working on, and they're going to make eye contact with you. Now, if you're almost, hang on, Peter said something. Now, if you're almost ready to, hang on, he said something, I can't understand what he's saying. Now, if you're almost ready to move on, can I have everyone's attention back, please? Credible and approachable. Sometimes people's voices are seen as very credible, and they might be the captain of a ship or the captain of an aeroplane. And when they speak with a very steady, assertive and credible voice. Other people have nice, approachable voices. And they get a bit of a smile and they get a little bit of a head bob as well. And you can see in my voice that I'm really pleased to be here. I'm really pleased to meet you. You need to be able to move between approachable and credible. If I'm meeting you for the first time and I'm really approachable, hey, really pleased to meet you. Yeah, we're going to have a great time today. This meeting is going to be really, really interesting. And I keep this friendly, approachable voice going. And now I need to get into something really important. And I keep the approachable going. You're not going to take my message seriously. So I need to be able to flatten my voice, deepen the tone a little bit, less smiling, less head bobbing, because I'm now speaking to you about something very, very serious. However, if I take this voice into the first time we meet and I say, look, I'm really pleased to meet you. We're going to have a great time today. You're going to be very worried about what sort of person I am because I'm strong, assertive, and maybe too credible. The ability to soften, the ability to go to credible and be more assertive in the voice pattern is really important. When you go to a job interview, at first, you probably want to say, yep, nice to meet you, really pleased to be here. There might be a few icebreaker questions, a bit of idle chit chat, then you're going to move into the interview. So Peter, can you give me an example of when you've used your project management skills to bring a project that was going over budget, over time, and you use your skills to bring that back on track? Imagine my response. Yeah, well, that's a really good question. I do a lot of project management things, and yeah, look, there's a few that have gone over budget and over time, and I've been able to use my wonderful project management skills to bring things back on track. I need to move from approachable to credible. Some last tips on how to look after your voice. One of the things with the pause is if you're nervous, you get to breathe. Another thing that happens with nerves is that your mouth will go dry, especially if you're speaking in front of an important audience, a big crowd, 200, 300 people, and you start to have a dry mouth. I always have water with me, so do drink fluids. Another little trick, you can put a Tic Tac just under your tongue, off to the side. You can use other mints as well, but Tic Tacs are nice and small. They take about an hour, 2 hours to dissolve. And what the Tic Tac does is it causes you to salivate. Dry mouth is gone. Tic Tac under the tongue, you produce saliva, dry mouth is gone. Fluids, as I mentioned before, but I have to be careful that I don't drink too much before, because if you need to go to the toilet midway through a presentation, that can be quite embarrassing. When I do a one-day workshop, I've got 4 breaks, morning tea, lunch, afternoon tea. Everything's okay, but even so, I have to be careful of not drinking 3 or 4 litres before going on stage, and I sip water on stage as required. Avoid the milk products. So this would be the flat white, the cappuccino, the latte, even the soy latte. The milk, the protein in the milk, cow's milk and in the soy may coat your vocal apparatus and can exacerbate any quiver, any nervousness in your voice. I still like to have a coffee in the morning, as I did this morning. I am comfortable with the long black, and so I'll have my caffeine fix, but I won't have milk in my coffee. Your newsreaders, your singers, opera singers, your actors all warm up their voice before they go on stage, before they go live on TV. They do tongue twisters, they do humming. What do you do to warm up your voice before you speak? Well, here's a question. Why wouldn't you warm up your voice before you go to a job interview? Why would you not warm up your voice before you go on stage to present? If you're going for a jog, If you're going to have a game of squash or a game of tennis or going to the gym, you would do your warm-up so you don't pull a hamstring, so you don't pull some other muscle. Why wouldn't we warm up this complex set of muscles, cartilages, nerves, which is the voice apparatus? So do warm-ups. So in summary, your voice matters, the power, the influence through your vocal variety, your volume, your speed. Pace and speed matters. Know your volume, change it. Don't be afraid to go soft. Use the power of the pause. If you're a rapid speaker, allow people to take in what you've said. This is the brain drops. You can use the broken sentence to bring people back. Now, what I'd like to do next is, all come back to the front so we can move on. Remember the credible voice. This is the steady voice where there's a steady intonation, maybe a downturn at the end. And then there's the approachable voice where there's an uptick at the end and the smiling and the head bobbing as we become more approachable. The art of influence is being able to move between approachable and credible as you need. And please, your voice needs looking after as any other muscle or instrument. Drink water, do your tongue twisters, your warm-up exercises, whatever you need to do. Next webinar, how to be a better virtual presenter. Of course, we've covered much of the voice today, but this is stuff around, your lighting, the microphone. This is how the clothing contrasts with your backdrop. Cameras not looking up your nose. A whole range of tips to help you be a more engaging, effective, and a better virtual presenter. Quite a few people registered for this webinar already. 20th of July, 9 a.m. to 9:30. Next workshops, I'm in Swan Hill on Friday this week for a corporate workshop, and then Monday, Bendigo winning presentation skills, and Violet has her Women in Leadership coming up in November. You know how to reach me. Any comments, information you want more on, peter@peterdew.com.au. So remember, what are you going to do? Do a self-audit and then get the feedback from other people. Do you need to change your volume? Reduce filler words? Slow down? Use more pause? What are you going to take away from today's workshop, today's webinar, that will be of value to you from a vocal quality in your next presentation? This is Peter Dew, public speaking trainer and coach, wishing you well for your next presentation. And remember this, what you've got to say matters. Use your voice to change the world, one conversation at a time.